experience with Chris and building this home was really transformational for me because it got me thinking about our cities in a different way. Now, when we enter into a project like the one that we just completed with you here in the region, we would like to ask this question, right? How do we create a region that people are actually going to ache for? That people will be homesick for? Because I'm not a believer that we should just keep all of our high school students here. I remember one time, Governor Bill Sackman, he was the governor of Iowa, his office called and said, Rebecca, we're working on talent retention. We want to keep all of our college graduates in Iowa. What should we do? And I'm thinking, I graduated from a college in Iowa. And I said, parole bracelet? A giant wall? I don't know. But I said, I think the smarter strategy is to let them go and make sure that they can come back, that they can find you, right? When they get to that place where what Iowa values, they value. So I'm not a believer that we need to, put our kids under lock and key here. I am a believer that we should invest in the kind of city and the kind of region that people will ache for. So what does this come down to? We did two things here to help you in creating a future community that people can get homesick for. First of all, we tried to get inside the minds of that consumer, that young professional, that young educated person who might choose Wichita or return to Wichita or stay in Wichita and raise that economic prosperity for the entire region. When those of you who are in business, you know that when you go to roll out a new product or a new service, you do focus group testing. You go to your intended users and you watch them use it and you get their feedback. So we had to get inside the mind. Same principle. We had to get inside the mind of the next generation. And then the second thing, and this is really important to us, is they had to be really engaged in this process. So over 1,000 of you engaged with us in sharing your hopes, your dreams, your wishes for this region, what will keep you here, what might bring you back. We talked to people who were left and asked what would bring you back. So with that sort of big bucket of knowledge, I want to share with you what folks said. In order to give this some context, we pulled apart some of the things that we think make a city a place that people pay for. We call them the 7 indexes of a next city, as we just heard. 7 of them. And next city refers to communities that have these attributes and attitudes and amenities that the next generation can get really excited about, right? So just quickly, the 7 attributes are these next 7, and then we'll talk about how Wichita scores. The first one, cost of lifestyle, right? Can I afford to live here? The second one, earning opportunities. Because here's the thing, right? With educated young professionals, you're not just trying to attract one of them here. You're trying to attract them and their partner or spouse. So the plus side is you get this economic 2-for-1 to the region, but the challenge side of this is it's not just about finding a place for one person. Now you've got to find career opportunities for both partners, right? Third thing, vitality. Is this a community that invests in parks, trails, and recreation? And someone keeps saying, especially people in the Midwest, they say, oh, Rebecca, we don't have mountains. We don't have an ocean, right? We're never going to get a good score in this index. My hometown, Madison, Wisconsin, gets a 9 out of 10 in this index. And I had to shovel before I came here today. How do we do that? Some of the reason is that, the mayor has really emphasized wanting to be a healthy city. And going back 20 years, we started to invest in bike paths and things that weren't cool at the time. And now, when you visit Madison during a snowstorm, I'm going to set up a cam, outside my office window on this. Molly, you can verify this. During a snowstorm, the bike paths get plowed first. And there are crazy freaks on their bike with goggles, thinking partner with the Michelin's man, they can hardly move, but they're biking to work, right? So these are some of the things that cities do to invest in their vitality index. Next one, the earning index. It's getting harder and harder for urban areas to get a good score in this index because we keep cutting funding for schools, right? We haven't figured out a way in urban areas how to make schools work. But this is another thing that really matters. And it doesn't just matter for young families, because that's obvious, right? Clearly young families want to move to, places that have got a great school system, but it also matters because as young professionals, we need to lead too. every couple of years. And we want to move to a community that's got, educational access points for us to advance our degrees. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but how easy is it to get around and out of town? So we look at, how much time people are spending in traffic commuting. We also look at things like, how many flights are running in and out of the airport every day, things like that. Because the truth is, next cities don't have to have world-class sports teams. They don't have to have world-class opera. Because when you talk to young professionals today about where they go to see world-class sports teams or world-class opera, they go where it already exists. You don't have to build all of it right here in your own zip code. Then, social capital. Being a community where everybody feels that they have a stake and say. So here we look at things like voting rates, we look at things like crime, right? Because in cities where people feel connected to each other, they don't harm each other. We look at things like, civic participation, whether the community has a young professionals organization or not. And this one, completely self-explanatory. What's there to do after fun? So here, which is like your first Friday and your final Friday, all those things go into that mix. Okay? So, what did 1,000 people say about how Wichita scores in these 7 indexes? The graphic I'm going to show you now is value versus perception. So those of you who took the survey may remember, right, that we asked how important are these indexes to you, and how well do you perceive the region is delivering. So in white will be value. In green will be perception. So here's what folks living in the region have to say. So we've got, I just realized that this is labeled, and this one, I bet is social capital mall. Social capital is at the very, oh, there it is. Cost of lifestyle, earning. Slightly embarrassing. I didn't pick this up during the run through. We'll make sure we publish this tomorrow on our website for you. But the long and the short, one of the key things is earning here. Huge gap between what's important, value, and perception. And then there's another big gap in around town. Where you're kicking butt is cost of lifestyle. Everybody says it's important. Most people say it's important. Most people say you're delivering. So, here we've got some quotes for you from folks who participants from survey respondents. Favorite aspects? Nobody understands how expensive it is to live other places. Cost of lifestyle costs. Period. Everything you could possibly need or want is within a short driving distance, which makes for more time to spend with my family rather than driving wherever to get to my home. So, that's the quick slide on how value and perception squares up. The key is to promote, wildly promote, where value and perception align. That's cost of lifestyle for you guys. But the agenda for change begins when people's value of something and their experience of it or their perception of it in the community doesn't match. So in those situations where there's a mismatch, there are two options. One is to say, is this true? And if it's true that the community is underperforming in that area, then we've got to put some things together to narrow the gap. But if it's not true, then the only explanation is that people just aren't aware. People just don't know, right? So that becomes a public communications campaign, right? A way to really get the word out about what's here. Now, the next thing we did was we took your actual scores of those 7 indexes. Each of the 7 indexes that I talked about has data that we can measure in communities. And then we asked the regional leaders and stakeholders, who should we compare Wichita to? And they came up with this list of peer cities. They said, look at us compared to these peer cities.